Hey everyone, Professor August here, and in this video I'll be talking about Tommy Dorfman's Maybe This Will Save Me. Maybe. Tommy Dorfman is an actress from 13 Reasons Why, and she rose to fame on the Netflix show in the late 2000 teensies, and the show's still there. You can go watch it. I was really interested when I got the notice that this memoir was coming out because I love reading fiction and nonfiction written by people who are around my age because I like seeing the things that they're able to achieve in the written form. And in the form of a memoir, you get to hear about their failures and the way they've overcome failures and the hindrances they've had in their lives and the obstacles that were in their way to achieve their goals. And so I really like those things. I was really interested in reading Tommy Dorfman's book just because of social media, following them on different platforms and seeing her transition during COVID and post COVID. So there was already an appeal there for me. But there are a couple of lessons I have extrapolated from this book that I want to talk about. So that's what I'm going to do. This book is a memoir. So she talks about growing up on the East Coast, her family life, her friendships growing up, sexual relationships that she had, her time in college, becoming an actor, booking 13 Reasons Why, and then now as a fully formed adult, uh, ever changing adult, as we all are, we sort of get a snippet into her life these days. I'm not going to spend time talking about the contents of the book other than mentioning a couple of things because I think it's worth reading, especially if you're a younger person who just needs a narrative like this to show you that there are people who are like you in existence. But there's there are two lessons I take from this book, and these are the two reasons why I think this book is so important, especially for our day and age. The first is uh, Tommy Dorfman and I grew up around the same era. So in the early 2000s, like the early 2000s, it was the latter Bush eras, early Obama eras. It was pre revocation of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. It was pre same sex marriage. And in that period, it was still very much normal for people to suppress their genders and sexualities. And I talk to my students about this because I see my students who are one, two, three generations younger than me, and they are just so open and so different from the way that I grew up because they grew up in a post Don't Ask, Don't Tell world, and they grew up in a post same sex marriage um, being illegal world. And so for us who grew up in the early 2000s, it required or necessitated us to try to find people who are like us, but oftentimes we couldn't find it in our age group. And that's one of the issues that Tommy Dorfman brings up. When she was a child, like to me, a 12-year-old, 14-year-old, 16-year-old is a child because they literally are. So when she was a child, she was 14, 15 years old. Um, she met literally a pedophile, somebody who was much older, who took sexual advantage of her. And what that indicates to me is that because of the era in which we grew up, we weren't able to always find people or talk to people who were like us in our age range. And that slowly changed after a few years of Obama being in office and like the 2000 teensies, we had a lot of TV shows and representation. And it became easier and easier for children to be able to just express themselves and find other children who are like them, to find safe spaces, to find, I don't know, clubs and organizations that spoke to their needs instead of having to go out and find, the adults who were going to help form them, but literally take advantage of them. One of the issues that we've been facing in recent years is a political party actively trying to attack uh, trans people like Tommy Dorfman and queer people in general, and by banning books, by passing laws to prevent healthcare and mental health care. I don't know, making this issue a taboo again. To me, it scares me because it's making us go back in time, and if our children are unable to be as expressive as kids have been able to be for the past 10 or 15 years, I fear that we're going to go back into a place where kids won't want to express themselves. They'll feel like it would be dangerous to say anything out loud, to try and seek other people who are in their age group to become friends with or to create relationships with. And they might go out and seek older folks. Now, I'm speaking from experience and she does too, because she talks about it in her book. For me, very much the same thing happened, except I I dropped out of high school, went to college, and in that college, there were a lot of older folks who saw what I was, and instead of it being a man who would take advantage of me, there were a group of women who saw what I was and the path that I was on, and they just encircled me and protected me, and I still talk to them to this day, and they're great friends. Had it not been for them, I could see myself having gone down a very similar path that Tommy Dorfman went down. And that's what I'm afraid of, is these days in the 2020s, and God willing, not in the 2030s, uh, just the demonization of queer folks and trans folks leading us down a similar path. And so that's one of the lessons I'm extrapolating from Tommy's book is, it was a very specific time in the early 2000s, that like 2000s, early 2010s, where this sort of thing was happening, and it was happening a lot, and it happened to close friends of mine. It could have easily happened to me. Thankfully it didn't, but I don't want us going back in time. And that's what one of the very interesting things that this book does. The second thing that I think is so important about this book is the fact that it's just a normal narrative. It's not a political activist book. It's not, here's a moral stance and we must follow through with this. This is just a story about Tommy Dorfman, how she grew up, her family, her relationships. And it is unique in that it's her experience, but it's not all that unique in that it's just a normal life. And it's had its ups, it's had its downs. The fact that she's a trans woman, great. Like, it is just normal. It is part of the normal experience of humans. And that's what I love so much about this. There have to be more narratives like this that are just about a human being's life, so that people can read them, learn about them, and say there's a group of people who are just normal human beings. Just because they look different or they sound different, or maybe I don't quite understand their life experience, but it is just a normal life experience. And that's what I really appreciated about the way that this book is written. um, it's not, I don't really know how to explain this. It's not like jargony or industry. Like, it's not about the entertainment world. There's a lot of it in there, but it's not difficult to understand if you're not part of. I'm not part of it, so, but I grew up in LA, so like there's a little just like passive understanding of it anyways. So it's easy access to just those of us who are, I don't know, academics and bankers and lawyers and, I don't know, baristas. It's not a hard read. So I really like that about this book. I really enjoyed reading this because it was really reflective of who Tommy Dorfman is, or at least it appears to be so. I don't know her, so I'm just saying that, but it seems authentic and genuine and really self-reflective, and it's super unapologetic. It is a story about a person's life, reflecting on what happened and how she was able to navigate certain situations. Um, and there's enough sort of acknowledgement of self and agency, what is her fault and what is not her fault. I think that's a brilliant way to write a memoir, and so I really enjoyed that aspect of it. The book took me about 4-ish hours to read, maybe about 4 or 5 hours to read. So it's not a particularly long book, and it goes by pretty quickly because each of the narratives is like, I can't believe this is happening. Oh, I can't believe that's happening. And then there are snippets in there about the TV show and about her personal life that are intriguing. There are certain things that are redacted and left out. So you kind of have to go and search for information on your own, which I think probably have to do with lawyers or like people saying, you can't name me, you can't put me in that book. Anyways, it happens in a lot of memoirs. That's not a huge deal. But I did enjoy it. I think if you are looking for a narrative that is just unapologetic about being a human being and making good choices and bad choices, this is a really good book. And I really do recommend it to younger audiences, like college students. I'll be recommending it to my students because I think there are a lot of them who would benefit just from knowing that there is a person out there who is like them. There are plenty of narratives of people who are just like them, who struggle with all sorts of different things, who have different addictions and problematic relationships, but they overcome and they grow up and they become adults. And that doesn't mean everything is cured. It just means that we find new ways of coping. And that's what this book does. It shows us that there is a way forward. So I like that about this. All right, I will catch you guys in the next video. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe below. Catch you in the next video.